to the Church of God Network podcast. I am joined here with my lovely friend, Jennifer Carter. Jen has a really fun background. She actually works for a soda company and she's got big brains. Let me just tell you that. She knows a lot about a lot of things with chemistry that blows my mind. And she's just a tender-hearted, loving human being, one of my very best friends. And I'm just so excited to have her on this podcast.
I'm excited to be here.
Yay, good. Awesome. So today we're going to be mainly discussing service projects. And this is something that Jen is really, really passionate about. She actually works with multiple different organizations, particularly Hilltop through Cagwa's Foundation Outreach International program. And she's just going to talk a little bit about that today. So, Jen, tell me a little bit about you, like you personally and professionally, kind of what got you to the point where you are now.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Personally, I'm born and raised in Texas. I have a huge family on my mom's side. My mom's whole side is in the church throughout different splinters through the whole Church of God network. And through most of my aunts and my sisters' example, this is all leading into why I've gotten into volunteerism. My grandmother, a bunch of my aunts and my cousins, they all have hearts of service. And so growing up, I got to witness them constantly giving to the poor, needy. They would pull me into events that they were working on, either through United or stuff with their high school. And that really, or like my grandmother, she had a huge heart of service. She would call people, she had a Rolodex. And I remember her very vividly, her sitting on the couch, just calling people in a church just to talk with them on the phone. And that's such an antiquated thing. We don't talk to people on the phone anymore, but it meant a lot to those brethren who were bedridden or house ridden. They didn't have any community outside of that phone connection. So through all of their examples is kind of what led me into being able to do what I'm doing now. And even people outside of my family, my friends through college. So just friends outside of the church who were not even our religion. They had really big hearts of service as well. And they would pull me into events that they were doing. I did go to Texas A&M. That's where I got my degree in food science. And at A&M, that college has a really big service program every year called the Big Event. And they would have individuals coordinate big volunteer events. And I was pretty shy in college, so I never led anything at that point. I started doing this later in life. So I got to witness all of my friends coordinate those things, and through seeing them complete these projects, that has given me the confidence to be able to break out and do it on a bigger scale with the church. So yeah, that's kind of like what led me into volunteerism with a little bit of my personal background in there. And then also living in Dallas, in the Dallas area, attending Cagua, it's such a big community here. So there's a large pool of people who also seek out volunteerism. So it's easier in this community to coordinate events and pull people in as well. So
Awesome.
that wasn't a lot about me. That was just about the volunteerism journey. So
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, so tell me a little bit more about like your journey in the church a little bit. Like, were you born and raised? Did you come in? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was born and raised in the church. Through my mother's side of the family, came into the church through her father back in the 60s, 50s, through the Radio Church of God. So through Worldwide, and then broke off when Worldwide broke. And so then my whole mom's side was in different groups throughout the years. And then I personally came back to United in 2010, and then it split. And then we stayed with Cagua after that. So that's my church journey. It's very colorful, a lot of experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've kind of been, one thing that I really loved about you is that you grew up in a very small, like independent church,
Mhm.
and you guys still made it an effort to reach out and talk to a lot of people who weren't just in like your small organization, but you also went to like fellowship groups and things with like UCG and things like that. And I love that you guys have like, you personally, you've always really inspired me because you think very critically for yourself, and you see people as other organizations as, brothers and sisters in Christ. And I think that's like so awesome. I think especially
Yeah.
when we first met, I was still in like a place where I was a little bit narrow minded, I think, and just getting to know you and seeing like, wow, like you're so with it and you're so like passionate about your faith. And you just, every time we talked, I just got so excited to talk to you about like the Bible. And you just have such a different perspective because you grew up more in an independent church instead of
Mhm.
just the church that I grew up in. And yet we had like the same foundational beliefs, which was really cool. So it was
Yeah.
all, yeah, you just always brought such a fun, like zest and new perspectives into the world.
Thanks. It might be I have a huge family, and we always, and all of my cousins are in a church. So a lot of it probably comes from that. Just I have 22 cousins. So
Wow.
we talk about the Bible a lot. So that in itself is a big church community as well. But
Hmm.
yeah, being in splinter groups it was, it was a good learning experience. You do kind of have to find um, find things out for yourself, because you don't have a big network of ministers to fall back on, and there's not a lot of resources. You do have to seek things out on your own a lot of the time. So there was a lot of good that came out of it for me personally. So that's cool.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Cool. So, what inspired you specifically to start getting involved with like Foundation Outreach International and the Hilltop Project? What was the kind of catalyst for that specifically?
Yeah, it was actually really cool. It was a cool point in time where I got to a point in my career where I feel comfortable with it. And then me and my husband, we feel very comfortable with ourselves. We were kind of settling into a time in our lives where we felt like we could do more. And we had a lot of personal discussions about Priscilla and Aquila and how they were service oriented and how their marriage is beautifully documented in the Bible. And we had always said, even on our honeymoon in Central Park in New York, we were like, this is who we want to strive to be like. We want to have a heart of service like them. And then it was a couple years until we felt really comfortable and had the bandwidth to start taking on projects or collecting people to do this with us. And so things started to fall in place. First, we were blessed with buying a house, and it was really important to have room to host people. So we started having people come over and doing small packing events. Our house is not big by any means, so like 10 people would come and it would be totally crowded. And that was really cool. So it kind of started at home. And then I started seeking out opportunities in the Dallas area so that the Sherman Brethren and the Dallas Brethren could come and serve. And so I found a couple organizations around the area that weren't Sabbath events that we could do like after work, and that weren't so labor involved in setting up. And so we did some food packing events twice. And then actually when COVID started, then I had all this time because I was sitting at home, and I got a call from one of my very close friends who said she'd been approached with this opportunity for Hilltop. So it didn't come to me directly, but she had been approached, and she wasn't in a space where she could take on the responsibility. And she was like, I think you could. And I was like, oh, neat. Send me the details and I'll look into it. And if I think it's a good idea, then I'll reach back out to Hilltop. But I never got around to reaching out to them before my father-in-law, who is a minister in Congo, called me and was like, hey, I think you would be great at this. I see what you're doing. I think you should talk to Rhonda. And so then Rhonda and I connected. We had a small or short interview one basketball weekend here in Dallas, and she told me about the program and what she was doing. and she is amazing. She does so much stuff for Hilltop and FOI. And I just knew that was God's way of taking all of these skills that I had been putting time into learning, and then really formalizing it and having a platform to help in a bigger way than what I had been doing. And to have Rhonda there to help me navigate through the challenges was good. So then again, I did have a mentor to help make sure that everything was successful. So yeah, it was kind of definitely God's direction in his hand.
That's awesome. That's so neat. So for people who don't know what Foundation Outreach International is or Hilltop, would you explain a little bit about what those are and how they work together?
Yeah, so the organization is actually FOI, and it's an umbrella organization, and it has 5 different pillars. I have to go back and check under it. And one of the main pillars is Hilltop. So the other pillars are internationally facing, and the Hilltop pillar was designed to be domestically or more locally facing, because there's a lot of organizations that are international and overseas, but they saw the need for people to use their heart of service in their local community in an area that is more visible to them than just helping aid something overseas, which is still great. And those programs are great. They drill wells for people. They have the English speaking projects. They fund children to go to college or technical school so that they can have a better outlook on life, more finances to have a better quality of life. That's what I was thinking of. So they have all of that. But then Hilltop is really, really focused on you and your congregation and your immediate community, and you making an impact there so that you can run the programs and you get to seek them out and find what your heart is aligned with, and you get to directly see the impact in front of you. So, and then it is a grant program. So the maximum you can receive is $500 if people are interested in it. They don't have to have a program that uses all $500, but there is an understanding that the financial part of doing volunteerism is a burden. It can be a burden. Not everybody has the luxury of having hundreds or even $50 lying around to donate to people. So Hilltop is trying to alleviate that portion of the project management cycle for people so that it's more accessible to them to actually serve in their communities. So,
oh, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So, what does that look like if someone was interested? How would they go about figuring out what to do? Because it can kind of be like, okay, cool, I have $500. Now what? What's the next step?
Well, so there is an application that they need to fill out, and they'll have to have done some research previous to filling it out. So the first step would truly be figuring out where your heart is calling you to serve, whether it be with maybe a group of widows or children or some type of segment in your church where you see there's a need for community, for some type of resource that's lacking. So you identify that need in your church community, or you find an organization external to the church or whatever community you're in, like the food bank or a children advocacy center, and reach out to those organizations, figure out what they need. You need to make a list and monetize it. So figure out what your dollar value is going to be, and then get a group of at least 5 people to serve with you, because that is a goal. We do want to encourage community development. So if you can have 5 people serve with you, we think that's a great party of hearts coming together and working for a greater cause. And then so fill out all of those fields in the application and then submit it. And then it'll go through me and a couple other board members. And then you get the approval for the $500. And so then they would send it to you, and you can go out and buy all the resources. Like if you were going to knit hats for newborns or little squishy animals, then you can go buy your yarn. Or if you need sanitary products for a women's shelter or something, then you could go collect all of those items. And then once you're done with the project, you can send in all the receipts. and pictures and a little write-up of what you did. And that's how we capture the impact that the money we gave you did. And then we keep that for us in our stats, and we like to log it to make sure that we're still creating a good impact as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool.
That's
So
a long and short of it.
yeah, yeah. So I noticed when I was like specifically looking on the Hilltop website that there's like a list of ideas, which I think is really smart because sometimes I think even just like it can feel a little overwhelming, to be like, okay, well, what do I do? Like there's so many different things that I could do. And so it's nice. There are places other than Hilltop too that have all kinds of ideas, like soup kitchens that you can go to. There's a project I've heard of called like Feed My Starving Children, which I love that. There are just so many different tiny things all around, where even if you just look up service projects in your local area, you can just easily find something. And oftentimes it's whether it's like church run or just a small nonprofit, they'll have like different ideas and very specific things that you can do. But like you said, there are things like women's shelters where you could just reach out to a place like that and say, hey, like, what do you guys need? If you have a heart for helping women who are struggling or who've been through an abusive relationship, that can be something where you kind of figure out what they need. And then that's when you kind of put the project together on your own.
Yeah. There's also, that's actually how I started figuring out what was in the Dallas area, because I was new to the Dallas area. There is a website called volunteermatch.com, and you type in your location, and then you do get to select what area of service you want to work in. Like if you want to do things with animals or the elderly, you can click those boxes, and you can put date ranges in there too, which is really cool. So then it'll only pull up events that are happening. So you can like exclude the Sabbath if you don't want to go on the Sabbath, or like you block out days of the week or whatever. So that was a really cool board that I found also. And that kind of helped me connect myself with my community to see what type of needs there are, and then help me broaden my horizon on what you can actually get involved in. So I thought that was cool too.
That's awesome. So how did you select like a certain service project? What was that for you? Like when you were kind of looking at all those different things, what were you specifically looking for?
Yeah. So my heart naturally draws to the elderly. So I always select the elderly programs that I want to go be involved in. But a lot of it is Meals on Wheels, to deliver food to the elderly or people who don't have family anymore to help feed them. So I do like those kinds of things. I did try to branch out, and I did some YMCA after school stuff with children with different disabilities. And that was really eye-opening. I found it wasn't for me because I'm not fun enough for them. They thought I was boring. So I'm a listener. So my skill is really to sit with the elderly and listen to them. So that was good. And that's a good example of like stepping out of your box and finding where your talents really match with your heart's desire and stuff, like where God's drawing you. So kind of sometimes just experiencing different types of volunteerism is healthy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just here in the local area, my husband's work, they had a little packing party where we put different baggies together for kids who are food insecure. And so during school week, they have food, but when they go home over the weekend, they sometimes don't have anything to eat. And so they give thousands and thousands of these bags out to these kids. And this is a really nice area. And you kind of forget how many people are struggling in your area, especially when you do live in kind of maybe more of a hoity-toity area. And there's so many opportunities to help people, and it only takes like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And man, it feels so good knowing that your time might help like one kid feel like they can just
Mhm.
breathe, whenever they
Mhm.
go home and not be having to constantly think about where their next meal is going to come from. And
Yeah.
it's so satisfying and also
Mhm.
just, uh, there's just so many different elements to service that is such a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Um, so could you explain to me maybe like a challenge that you've dealt with at some point, like when you were putting together a service project or maybe even just being involved in one? What would that look like for you?
Yeah. I've probably run into all the challenges that you could think of. The analysis paralysis, not knowing what to do, being nervous that people like it's not going to come together, being nervous that you didn't get enough material. Um, yeah, all those things. But really planning the big events for like camps and young adult leadership weekend, and then winter family weekend, which we're really trying to scale up to be a really large event. Those are really challenging because they're remote. You're not there, especially at Winter Family Weekend in Louisville. Since I'm in Dallas, I don't know the community, so I have to do a lot of research to figure out what their needs are there. And a lot of it is food insecurity. It's very sad, but there's a lot of food insecure children. That's what we did last year. Also, was food packing for children in the schools. So there's a huge need for that. But the research, trying to get all the material to the location this last year, we were going to do 1,000 snack packs. So I was going to drive half the material up in my Jeep from Dallas, and it was not going to fit. So then I had to recruit people to like chauffeurs of this food up to Winter Family Weekend. And then 2 days before we are going to leave, one of the manufacturers of the granola bars sent out a recall saying that there was salmonella in the
Oh,
thousand granola bars that we had
no.
purchased. Then I had to throw all those away and switch gears. Um, and it was a little nerve-wracking. You have this big event coming up. You have people expecting to volunteer and make a good impact. And so there can be a lot of pressure depending on how big of a project you're doing. But if you just pray about it, God always finds a way and it always turns out just fine. And everybody always loves the events because you're trying to do good for the community and bringing your community together. So it's always okay in the end.
Awesome. I love that. So, oh, what have you seen like through all the different service projects that you've done? What's been oftentimes like the key area of success for a service project? Have you seen any like kind of through line things there?
Success in completing a project or success in feedback from the people who you're serving?
Mm, maybe both. Kind
Both.
of curious about
Okay.
both.
So success in completing a project really comes down to organization or having a team member who's organized to help you keep track of all the little elements that need to be completed. So if organization, I don't want to deter people who don't have that. They have a hard service and maybe not the organizational or the administrative skills. Just find a friend who wants to do this with you, and they'll agree to like calculate the number of granola bars you need, or like feet of yarn you need, or number of bags, or whatever. Um, so that the administrative stuff on the back end is what is going to make your project succeed. And then for success, for like your recipients, it's really I it's really wonderful for you. They're just so happy, especially when you identify a nonprofit that you want to serve. So I'll give an example. For the first year we did the Winter Family Weekend volunteerism event, we chose uh, Girls and Boys Haven, which is an orphanage in Louisville. And even though they're a nonprofit and they're an orphanage, you would assume that they received a lot of donations. And we had people craft hats for them, just little beanies. And we did buy little gloves off of Amazon. They were the cutest little thing. And so we did it for the 50 kids that they had and at that time, and we drove them to deliver after the church members had created them. And they were so grateful. The way that they responded was overwhelming to us because we didn't expect them to be so grateful and just overjoyed that we had spent so much time thinking about them, planning, and then bringing them something that was handcrafted was really, really special to them because these children don't have families and this is their family. So for us to reach out and to have a little note that they're loved was just, it was met with an emotion that we weren't prepared for when we dropped them off. That
Yeah.
was really wonderful. So yeah, and I think that that's probably a piece of success that most people would be taken back by when they complete a project and go deliver whatever they've created for their
Yeah.
recipients.
Man. Ugh, that just like makes me emotional just thinking
I know.
about that. It's like,
It was beautiful.
that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. And I
Mhm.
think especially when you have opportunities to actually directly have like contact with the people that
Mhm.
you're serving, there's something really special about that because it you're looking into someone's eyes
Mhm.
and you realize like, oh wow, this is like as a person. It's not just
Yeah.
going out into the ether and like someone
Yeah.
else is going to deliver it to you. And so
Mhm.
obviously there are service projects where you're not exactly going to be working one-on-one, but
Mhm.
and some people are okay with that. They're like, okay, awesome. I know it's going to a good cause. I'm good. But I think there is something to be said about working directly with people and finding opportunities to sit with them and talk to them and get to know them and just I think a lot of people just long to be seen and heard. And even that is such a service, like what you were saying earlier, even sometimes just going to old folks' homes and just sitting with them for an hour or two, or um, a lot of them don't have family that will come
Mhm.
visit them anymore. And I think one time, if I recall, we put together like a little fun show for
Oh.
an elderly group in our area, and so each of us had different things. Like I sang, and someone else played piano, and then other people did like a skit, and it was just like it was so cute seeing the joy on their face that they're just wow, these youngins just put all this random stuff together for us to entertain us. And then we just went and sat and just like chatted with them. And even things like that, like doesn't have to be maybe, for example, if you don't have the skills of, organizing or uh administration, that's something that you can easily do and you can pull together some friends and be like, okay, we're going to be
That's
here at this time. And
Mhm.
so there's
And
all kinds of different things.
that doesn't even cost money. All that
Hmm.
is your time and your willingness really to go sit with them or even to go to a food bank. I think every city, I haven't looked, but I'm pretty sure every city has a food bank. And food banks always need, well, they always need donations.
Hmm.
There's always food drives for that, but then they need people to help sort. They need people to help uh, organize their shelves. And that's a really cool thing to go do too. And it's free. Or to go to your animal shelter and,
Hmm.
play with a dog. There's that too. I know they're not humans, but that's still an active service and it's still very much needed. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then Chantal, I have to tell you about playing piano in old folks' homes or nursing homes. When in my 20s, I took piano lessons with a church member. She was my teacher, and she has a huge heart of service. And she had coordinated our recitals at the local old folks home that was by her house. And I was a horrible, horrible piano student. I cannot play the piano. It is not my thing. I I don't know why I push myself into all these avenues that I'm not good at. I figure out that I'm not good at them. But I decided I wanted to play the Jurassic Park theme song. I was the oldest person there playing the piano. These 5-year-old kids were playing like Mozart and stuff. And I got up there and played so nervously Jurassic Park. It was a beautiful song. But all the residents there loved it, and it just brightened their, not just my son, but the children who were
Mhm.
actually prodigies and had skill.
You're like, my song
Yes.
brought it all.
No, no. But it was so nice, and they slowly, more and more people would actually come into this room and sit down because it was something special during the day that they could come, and it broke up the monotony of their day, and they were so appreciative. It was really nice, and that didn't cost any money. You just go
Mhm.
play the piano, or if you have a musical like you, musically talented. So that's a good point too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I remember you mentioned that you probably reached out to some different companies to get like bulk items. Like what part, I know it's kind of like a left field, but my brain's just kind of going back, but just kind of thinking about that. What part do you like collaborations and partnerships come into play if you're doing something like a packing event or something where you need a lot of items at once? Is it where you like go to the grocery store or do you like reach out directly to companies?
Yeah, so this time was the first time that I had done something on that large of a scale. It really takes a network to figure out what companies will donate to you. So since I do work for a beverage company, I had been keeping my ear to the ground if there were product that I could snag for this, and to get cleared for a donation. So I was able to grab some Snapple to take to the Winter Family Weekend, but that's because I work there.
Mhm.
So I don't know how I would go scout out another company or another food manufacturer, especially since I work for a big food company. I don't know how I'd go to a competitor. But if you know somebody like in your immediate network who works for a grocery store, it doesn't hurt to ask if they want to donate a certain quantity, like 10 loaves of bread or something like that. But you do have to find the correct person in that company who can say yes.
Mhm.
So that's a little more labor intensive. But what we did this year for Winter Family Weekend was something new. I'm not good at money generation, but we did need more money than we had in the budget for that event. And so I tried a bunch of different avenues to see what would work. So I made flyers and stuck them on bulletin boards. Nobody looks at bulletin boards. I asked people who worked in like fast food if it was okay to hang this flyer on their drive-through window. And then I created uh, a little video on Canva, like a commercial, and I had never used Canva before. This was brand spanking new. This was a new skill to me. And I reeled people in, like my dad, who has a different network than me, and my sister-in-law, who has a different friend group than me. And I asked them to post it on social media to have others donate actual food items. So I made an Amazon list, which you can do. Like you can do a wedding registry or a baby registry. You can also do a wish list. And so that was the controlling factor of that. So it was a wish list connected to this commercial that I pushed out in as many avenues as I could. And we were able to triple the amount of items that we were going to be able to buy on our own.
Wow.
So it was really cool. It was a good little experiment, and maybe this next year, I'll do it better. But I'm not a good person to actually give advice on that because I was all fumbling around in it and a lot of praying. um, so but if you have experience like selling Girl Scout cookies or Boy Scout popcorn, much like that, like you might even consider putting up a table at a grocery store or something. I don't know, but it's a
Yeah.
lot like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, no, that's great. I mean, I think part of it is even just having the confidence to try something, even if it fails, like that's a huge thing of just putting yourself out there that can be a big roadblock and realizing like, you know what? There's nothing to lose here. And maybe a little bit
Yeah.
of maybe people rejecting me, but other than that,
Yeah.
like it's all for good. It's
It
not a
might not even
big.
be confidence, might not be, it might, I think it's more determination. If
Hmm.
you really want to get it done, you don't have to be confident, you just do it. And if it
Hmm.
doesn't work, oh well, try something else and be determined in a different way. So,
Yep,
mhm.
absolutely. So after like a service project that you've completed is done,
Mhm.
is there a way that you guys are able to like measure the impact that it made like later on or reach out or
Yeah, so a lot of times the organization will reach back out and send a thank you. So like a thank you card, or
Mhm.
if it's a big enough impact, then they'll do a tax write-off. So you have to fill out a form if you're giving a big enough donation. So you get a quantified measurement there. We don't have a lot of metrics on what our impact is. That's why we ask people to send pictures back. And then we have whatever they wrote up in a document saying what their impact was going to be. It's really just a trust system that you used this money to do that according to the receipts, and you submitted it to whatever organization or recipient you identified. So it's just a lot of trust on our part that people are using the money correctly and they're executing the projects and stuff. We just like seeing the pictures come back
Mhm.
of everybody having a good time and their hearts growing in love and grace. And so, yeah.
Mhm. That's awesome.
Mhm.
So what's one of the fondest memories that you have that was like a really rewarding moment for you? I know you mentioned being able to drop off at um the orphanage, but is there also something else that you can think of that was just like
Yeah.
really rewarding for you when you put something together?
Yeah. Okay, so not a Winter Family Weekend event. Oh, I didn't actually put this together. I have to give a shout out to the Taylors, Christina and Britton, also, because they've been doing a young adult leadership weekend volunteer planning for a long time. And one year I think they planned that women's shelter and an elderly center. And I went to the women's shelter, and we just showed up and played with these kids. And it was so stinking fun, just running around on the playground with these little kids who were there. And it would seem like they didn't have a care in the world, but they were not in good, family positions and stuff. And
Yeah.
that to me, there was just one little kid that was cracking us up the whole day. He was so sweet. And that's just a really fun memory. So being with these people, they're just people and they're in bad situations, and even just your presence brightens their day. And I'm sure they'll remember it for a long time. That one time this huge group of people in matching shirts came and just hung out with them on the playground. So yeah, that's another fun memory.
That kind of reminds me of there was a year that my family we actually got to go to Thailand and we found an orphanage in the local area to go visit. Actually, like a big group of us all went. Maybe there was like 15 or 20 people. And we just went to just go play with the kids. And none of them could speak English and none of us knew any of their language. But like we basically like mimed to each other. And it was like we each had like one of these kids kind of like adopted us, like where they chose who their favorite was. And like we helped them like get their shoes on and do all these different things. And it was just like at the end, I was like, I think I was like 16. I was like, I want to adopt this child. He's so cute.
It
It's
was
just,
fun.
it's so neat. Like even if there's like you can't even speak the same language, but
Mhm.
there's that love and there's that
Mhm.
connection of just appreciation that you cared enough to just be with them and just you don't even need words for
Mhm.
that. And I think that that is so special having moments like that with people who they've been through a lot and
Yes.
sometimes this world is really heavy and it's nice to know that there are good people out there because I think it can be um
Isolating.
isolating. Yeah, very, very isolating. And um not a give and take relationship either. It's a give and give
Yeah.
because not only are you giving your time, that you get so much out of it as well. And it's just this beautiful symbiotic thing that I
Mhm.
think I think why God encourages us to do good works. And he says, like, true Christianity is
Mhm.
going and um, helping the orphans and the widows. Like, that's the
Yep.
epitome of what a Christian is. And this something that we um, need to be searching out and seeking out to find because
He tells us to sharpen up on these skills. So,
mhm,
and we all have the capacity, and we all have talents, and we all, well, I don't want to say we all, but time is such a valuable resource, and
mhm,
giving a little bit of that to somebody else means so much. And
yeah,
so, like all of these events that we're talking about, not all of them need money, but your time is so special, and God is watching what you do with your time. And so, it's just really important that you do, fine tune these skills, because in the kingdom, we're going to be interacting with so many different people who had tons of different experiences, and we need to know how to empathize with them and communicate and um, connect with them. And we should be exercising those skills now. So your Thailand experience, that's a really good example of how it could be, like,
mhm,
I don't know, they
yeah,
just came from totally different backgrounds than you, and that's really beautiful.
yeah,
Love that
yeah.
example. Mhm.
I love that you brought up the fact that, like, the fact that we're brushing up on our skills right now. Like, right now is our training ground. I
Yeah.
think sometimes, at least when I was younger, I kind of had this thought of like, oh, well, like later on is when we're going to be doing things. And like right now, we're just taking care of ourselves and we're, as long as I'm in the kingdom, I'm good. But I think the
Mhm.
older that I get, and I think that just comes with age too, you start realizing like a soldier would not just sit around and, twiddling his thumbs, waiting for the war to come. He's
Mhm.
practicing and he's training and he's
Yep.
doing things. And we're supposed to be like that. We're
Mhm.
not supposed to be sitting around and thinking about ourselves. And I think oftentimes we get so bogged down with just the stress of life, which I think Satan not intentionally does that, so that we just
Yeah.
get so focused inward that we forget the impact, and not only for us but for other people, um, what it is to be focusing outward and to
Mhm.
serve other people outside of yourself.
Mhm. That's what Christ did,
Mm-hmm.
and he expects us to be like him. We need to grow our hearts in love, and this is a really good way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So, what advice would you give to someone who's kind of interested to kind of organize something, maybe want to dip their toes in the water in their local area, but
Mhm.
like they don't know where to begin, they've never done anything like this before.
Mhm.
What would some sage advice be from Jen?
I would say do it. Do not be afraid to do it. There's always people who will help. So if you are looking around or you don't know where to look around, go to Hilltop, look at the list that you mentioned earlier. We have some ideas down there. You don't have to do those ideas, but most of them you could probably find in your community if you find something interesting there. And then find a core group of friends or family members or church members who want to do it also, so that you have a community, a smaller, intimate community to make it happen. So you don't have to do it all on your own. It's easier to plan stuff with other people who are just as enthusiastic as you. So, really, my advice would be to find people who want to do this with you, and then do it with them for a little while. And if you want to go on a have a bigger event, then slowly start including more and more people. But start small, start with something that you're really passionate about, and maybe find like 2 or 3 people who are passionate about it also. And the more you talk about it at church, the more you're going to see that people have a heart of service and they don't know where to start either.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start talking about it, then you're going to be really surprised at how much reciprocation you get. So you'll find that little niche really quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's so true. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times, like we were talking about earlier, like the fear of starting kind of holds
Mhm.
people back. And
Mhm.
so it just takes one person.
Yep.
to make change, even in just in your local congregation, putting
Mhm.
together a service project and going to your minister and saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about putting this together. Do you think maybe we can announce it? We need X amount of people. Could we potentially announce it in announcements and see if
Mhm.
anybody's interested? And we'll put something over in the bulletin and I'll have like a sign up list. So the first 5 or 10 people that sign up, they'll get to do it. And maybe if that goes really well, then we could do another one and something more."
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
amazing how like just little things like that, like I think sometimes, at least for me, I used to kind of wait for other people to do it
Mhm.
because I don't know, like I'm just so used to not being the one to start.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why, but that's just I've noticed that maybe it's our school system or something that like taught us like just wait around, someone will tell you what to do. But I think you start realizing like, wow, like I'm an adult now and it's my job if I am craving service,
Mhm.
like God's putting that on your heart for a reason
Yeah.
because you have the capacity to do something about it and to be maybe the start of something really exciting
Mhm.
for your church congregation or your community, and that can just snowball and to be such a profound experience for a lot of people. And then it's not just you anymore. Other people are starting to put together and things that they're passionate about, and that can lead to some really cool conversations. And
Yeah.
um, yeah.
You might also find that other people are conducting events. They do have something that, or like a group that gets together and sews sanitary pads for children in Africa, and they do that weekly or bi-weekly. So if you start the conversations, if you start talk to your minister, he might be able to direct you to a group, or he might even have some experience in the community where he can help you find a nonprofit that you could work with or something like that. So
Mhm.
you got to start talking about it and showing people that you're interested, because you'll see how much interest there is once
Mhm.
you start.
Yeah,
You got to start
absolutely.
though.
Hmm. Yep.
You have to start.
Yep. You, whoever's
Yes.
watching.
Yeah.
If you're gotten this far, you're interested. I know
Uh-huh. Yes.
it. Yep. So Hilltop's an option. Another option is Church of God Network. We actually have within your gates. And that's really neat because it's specifically about service projects. So it's a grant program kind of similar to Hilltop, where you reach out and you say, "Hey, maybe there was a disaster that recently happened in your area and you want to do some help with some local people in your area that maybe something happened to their house, and you fill out same thing, an application, and then you'll get some grant money to be able to help you get all the tools and necessities that you need for that project." And so it's essentially like pretty much the same thing. And anybody can come and say, "Hey, there's this thing that we want to do. This is what we need." And then if all goes well, we'll give you a grant for that. So, and I know there's all kinds of different grant programs out there. Like, you just got to look for it. There's so many people
You can
who,
Google it.
yep.
It'll pop up.
So there's so many different opportunities out there. The only thing holding you back is just you not looking for it. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah. So I guess my last question would be, um, what's your next project and what are you kind of like starting to get into right now?
Oh, Christine and I are supposed to film a video for Young Adult Leadership Weekend. It's another commercial.
Mhm.
So hopefully uh, we can do that well and drum up a lot of interest in that whole program. So that's what's going on now. But yeah, just doing a lot of volunteerism here in the Dallas area. Um, it's kind of getting bigger. We're getting a lot more interest. A lot of the parents want their children to be involved, so we're trying to find ways that children 5 and up can be involved.
Mhm.
So there's more I'm researching more nonprofits in the area to figure out how we can create more areas for them to serve.
That's really
So then-
cool.
Yeah, so then we can be those lights that I had in my grandmother and my aunts and my other influences as a child to give me some type of footing to be able to do what I'm doing now.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
Mhm.
It's amazing how it just kind of gets passed on from generation to generation. And I think it's so special starting to serve from childhood too. And it kind of, the younger you are, the more it just, the love for service gets ingrained in your heart. And you just appreciate it a lot. And I think as a kid, there's something to be said about serving as a kid because sometimes when you're little, you don't know how much impact you have. But when
Mhm.
you're little and you realize, like, wow, like what I'm doing is actually helping, it can give you such a huge boost of confidence. So even
Mhm.
doing things like as a family, and it doesn't just have to be, older people, it can be kiddos or teenagers. And, if you're interested in doing something or putting something together, you can always ask your parents, say, hey, I found this thing and I really want to do it. Just
Mhm.
try, just see what happens. And
Yeah.
it could be the start of, I don't know, something that you're really passionate about. Even just reaching out to little old ladies in your church and just going and visiting them. That even is just a special service that, ugh, they're the best. I love
Yeah.
little old ladies. Little old men are great too, but little
I
old
can't
ladies
wait
are
to be
just
a
so
little
cute.
old lady. I want all of the cards when I'm a little old lady. I'm gonna read all of them.
I love it. Mm.
Oh, that's another thing. Sorry, I know we're wrapping up,
No,
but
you're good.
the children at camps will sometimes write cards to shut-ins, widows, and widowers within the church.
Mhm.
And some of them will write back and tell us how meaningful it is to receive a card,
Aw.
no matter how illegible or poorly stuck the glitter is. They love it for you to reach out. It's the human connection that
Mhm.
God designed in us that you're trying to cultivate. So I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just really important. It's beautiful.
it is. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, that's what service is about. It's human connection. And sometimes we lack that in our society today.
Yep.
Where especially if you're working from home and you're staring at a screen all day and
Mhm.
it's just we're craving that more and more. So this is an opportunity to really um meet needs that are sorely lacking, not only for people that you're helping, but for your heart. And I think there's something to be said about looking outward instead of inward. It's a very
Mhm.
healing experience. And
Mhm.
um, there was actually a lady that I heard of where she had like really deep depression and she was really struggling in her life. And there was a man in her church who said, hey, do you know how to cook? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, all right, well, you get like a big pot of gumbo. Can you make gumbo? And she's like, yeah, I can make gumbo. She's like, okay, you just come over to this bridge this night and bring your big pot of gumbo. And I promise you'll feel better. And so she went there and they just fed like 50 homeless people just from this big pot of gumbo. And
Mhm.
every week after that, she started going back. And over time, she's like, I didn't have depression anymore because I wasn't so inwardly focused anymore. I
Yeah.
was thinking about what I can do next to help. And she actually ended up starting her own nonprofit, like a
Mhm.
completely new nonprofit. So it's amazing how I think there is a beauty and there's a healing to
Mhm.
service work on both directions. And it's it's just so special.
It is.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for talking and joining us today, Jen.
Thanks, Chantel.
I love you dearly. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks. You too. Night. Bye.